What if the greatest escape you ever made wasn't from a threat, but to something you never knew you needed? What if the past you tried so desperately to outrun showed up on your doorstep looking for a second chance? That's a question Elias Eli Thorne lived with every single day in Redwood Creek, Montana. A former K-9 officer, Eli had built a life as secluded as the towering pines that guarded his cabin. The scent of fresh-cut pine and worn leather was his perfume, the vast echoing silence his only companion. This solitude wasn't just a preference. It was a fortress, meticulously constructed brick by emotional brick, to keep the outside world and the haunting ghosts of his past firmly at bay. Each sunrise was a quiet promise that today he wouldn't have to face anyone, anything beyond the rhythm of his own breath and the occasional rustle of a deer in the undergrowth. But one crisp autumn morning, that carefully cultivated peace shattered. It wasn't the slamming of a screen door or the bark of a distant coyote. It was a visceral, unsettling sensation, a prickling of the skin that sent a familiar jolt through Eli's retired officer's heart. It was the same instinct, raw and immediate, that used to warn him of danger before he even saw it. He walked to the edge of his property, his boots crunching softly on the dew-kissed leaves, and there it was, fresh footprints. One set was undeniably small human barefoot. The other, impossibly deep and wide, belonged to a large dog. A pit formed in Eli's stomach. No one wandered this far out by accident, and certainly no child, not unless they were running from something far worse than the cold. His hand instinctively hovered near where his service revolver used to sit on his hip, a phantom weight now replaced by the calloused skin of a working man. But it wasn't the human tracks that truly sent a shiver down his spine. It was the dog's tracks. They spoke of power of purpose and an almost unnatural quietness for a creature that size. Then he saw them. A flicker of movement in the low brush. He squinted, his breath catching in the chilly air. There, hunched near a fallen log, was a boy. Maybe 9 or 10 years old, filthy, thin as a rail, with hollowed cheeks and eyes that held the defiance and terror of a cornered animal. But Eli's gaze snapped past the boy to the magnificent creature standing beside him. It was a Labrador, its golden fur matted with dirt and leaves, but still radiating a quiet strength. Its ears were slightly perked, its body tense but not aggressive. And its eyes, those eyes held an intelligence, a wary focus that Eli knew all too well. This wasn't just a stray dog. This was a K-9. A flash. Eli's mind reeled back years to the day he buried his own K-9 partner, Ranger. The same loyalty in those dark, intelligent eyes. The same protective stance. Ranger, who had stood between Eli and the darkest corners of the world, whose absence still echoed in the chambers of Eli's heart. This new dog, this tank, as Eli instinctively called him, moved with the precision of a trained animal, scarred and tired, but still fiercely devoted. "Hey, kid." Eli's voice was low, calm, the practiced tone of an officer trying to de-escalate a volatile situation. "That your dog?" The boy didn't answer, just clutched tighter to the Labrador's fur, his eyes locked on Eli's. Tank let out a low rumble, not a threat, but a deep, resonant warning. Eli crouched down, his knees protesting the cold earth seeping through his worn jeans. "You're safe here, all right. Ain't no one gonna hurt you." For a long moment, the world held its breath. The boy's ragged breathing, the dog's tense posture, the heavy weight of unspoken stories. Then, as if a spell had broken, the boy's lips parted, his voice barely a whisper. "He's not my dog. He just found me." Eli felt a profound shiver. He looked at Tank, and the Labrador looked back. In that glance, something unspoken passed between them. They were both strays in a way. Eli's voice softened, the steel dissolving into something gentle. "Well, sometimes the right ones find us when we don't even know we need them." He stood slowly, his joints aching, but a new resolve settling in his heart. "Come on inside. You both look like you could use a hot meal, and maybe a place to breathe easy for a while." The boy, Leo, hesitated, his eyes flickering between Eli and the vast empty horizon. Eli thought he might bolt. But then, almost imperceptibly, Leo nodded. And just like that, the three of them, Eli the boy and the magnificent nameless Labrador walked toward the cabin. Slow, careful. Like a new beginning they weren't sure they deserved, but were willing to try. What happens when the past you've tried so hard to outrun shows up on your doorstep looking for a second chance? And what if, just what if, that chance was waiting for you, wagging its tail all along? The old screen door of Eli's cabin creaked open, a sound that usually announced nothing but the wind. But today, it whispered of a fragile new beginning. The air inside smelled of old coffee, worn leather, and the faint grounding hint of cedarwood. For Leo, it was a universe away from the cold, the fear and the uncertainty he had known. He stood on the threshold shivering slightly, his eyes darting like a feral animal, unsure if this was a trap or a reprieve. Tank the Labrador remained glued to his side, a silent shield, wet fur, bristling muscles coiled tight. Eli moved with a quiet purpose, stoking the wood stove until the fire crackled a warm invitation. He poured steaming cocoa into a chipped mug for Leo and set about toasting slices of bread on the griddle. He kept his hands busy, a lesson learned from years on the force. Some folks, especially the broken ones, talked best when you didn't look them straight in the eye. Leo sat clutching the mug, his hands trembling slightly, while Tank, a damp, muddy sentinel, settled at his feet. The only sounds were the pop of the firewood and the occasional drip from Leo's soaked clothes onto the floor. Eli watched them not directly, but from under the brim of his hat. He saw the way Leo tore into the bread like he hadn't eaten in days, which Eli figured probably wasn't far from the truth. Days bled into a tentative routine. Eli would chop wood, repair the rickety porch swing, mend the broken fence, and Leo slowly, cautiously would help. He'd ask small questions about stacking wood, about fixing a torn shirt, about cooking scrambled eggs without burning them. Each question was a precious, fragile seed of trust. Tank, always a shadow, never more than a few steps from Leo, seemed to breathe easier. Eli noticed the boy's ribs weren't so sharp anymore, the dark hollows under his eyes slowly fading. It wasn't much, but it was a start. A fortress of quiet acceptance built from small acts of kindness. One crisp morning, as the sun climbed over the ridge painting the world in shimmering gold, Eli called Leo over. His voice was easy, but with an edge of something serious. "Come here, kid." Leo jogged over Tank, trailing behind his tail, wagging as if he knew something important was about to happen. Eli set his coffee mug down and crouched to Leo's level, his old joints creaking. He looked the boy straight in the eye, his gaze steady and calm, the way you speak when you need someone to hear you, not just with their ears, but with their heart. "I've been thinking," Eli began, "about names. Names matter. They tell the world who you are, and I reckon you've earned yours." Leo blinked, surprised. "What do you mean?" Eli glanced at Tank, who sat patiently by Leo's side, head tilted as if listening intently. "That dog has been called Tank long enough. That was the name they gave him when they thought he was just a tool, just a piece of equipment. But he's more than that. He's family now, just like you." Eli reached out, resting a calloused hand on Leo's shoulder. "You get to name him Kid. Make it count." Leo stared wide-eyed as if Eli had just handed him the keys to the world. He looked down at the Labrador, who wagged his tail, softly waiting. A long pause stretched between them, filled only by the chirping of crickets and the distant call of a hawk. Then Leo whispered almost shyly, "How about Ranger?" Eli's breath caught in his throat. The name hit him like a freight train. The memories rushed back raw and potent, his old canine partner, the badge, the years on the road, the final agonizing farewell. He felt the sting behind his eyes, a phantom ache in his chest, but didn't let it show. Instead, he smiled, slow and proud. "Ranger," he repeated, his voice thick with an emotion he didn't dare name. "Yeah, kid, that's a damn fine name." Tank No Ranger let out a soft bark as if approving and nudged Leo's hand with his nose. The boy's face lit up, and Eli swore the sun itself seemed to shine a little warmer on them. But the warmth was short-lived. Later that week, a white SUV with chipped paint rattled down the dirt road, kicking up dust like a bad omen. Two men emerged, a county sheriff, and a man in plain clothes, Agent Henderson, with Child Protective Services. Henderson's voice was clipped professional, but too smooth to trust. "Afternoon, Mr. Thorne. Heard you've got a guest." Eli's jaw tightened. He crossed his arms, planting his boots firmly on the ground like roots. "This is private property. You got a warrant." Henderson offered a tight smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Just here for a welfare check. We've had reports of a missing child fitting a certain description. Thought we'd take a look around." Leo's body stiffened, a coiled spring ready to bolt. Ranger let out a low growl, a rumble that filled the air with tension. "Kid's safe," Eli said, his voice firm, the kind that could talk a man down off a ledge or stand up to a badge. "He's got a roof over his head, food in his belly. He's not going anywhere he doesn't want to go." Henderson's expression tightened. "That's not for you to decide, sir." Eli clenched his fists. He wanted to shout, to tell them to get the hell off his land. But he knew how this worked, push too hard, and they just pushed back harder. He glanced at Leo's pale face, the way his hands gripped Ranger's fur until his knuckles were white. "You see that dog?" Eli said, his voice low and even, pointing to Ranger. "That's a retired K9. Been through hell and back. And you know what he's doing right now? He's watching. He's protecting. Same as me. So unless you've got paperwork, you can take your questions and your fancy boots and go." For a long moment, no one moved. The only sound was the wind rattling the trees and the soft crackle of the fire inside the cabin. Finally, the sheriff cleared his throat, looking a little uncomfortable. Maybe we ought to come back with a court order." Henderson's eyes flickered, calculating, but he gave a tight nod. "We'll be in touch." Eli didn't relax until the SUV had rattled back down the road, dust rising behind it like smoke. Only then did he let out the breath he'd been holding. Leo sat frozen, his face buried in Ranger's fur, his small body trembling. Eli knelt beside him. "It's okay, Leo. They're gone. For now." Leo's voice was muffled raw. "They'll come back." Eli's throat tightened. He couldn't promise they wouldn't. But he could promise this: "Then we'll be ready. You hear me? We don't quit." Ranger let out a soft whine, his eyes warm and steady as they met Eli's. For a moment, all three of them, man, boy, and dog, sat there bound by something stronger than fear. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the porch swing, sending leaves swirling across the yard. Eli glanced at the sky. Clouds were rolling in, dark and heavy. A storm was coming. He could feel it in his bones. But inside that little cabin, they were a fortress. And they weren't going down without a fight. The storm broke just after sundown. It wasn't merely a change in the weather. It was a physical manifestation of the dread that had settled over Eli's cabin. Thunder cracked so hard it rattled the windows in their frames, each boom a grim drumbeat, echoing the anxiety in their chests. Rain came down in sheets, a relentless, punishing torrent that threatened to wash away not just the roads, but any fragile hope they had managed to cultivate. The sky outside was a churning mess of black clouds and blinding flashes of lightning, each strike illuminating the room in stark, eerie bursts, exposing the raw fear in Leo's eyes. Eli sat by the front door, his old hunting rifle resting across his lap, boots planted firm on the worn floorboards. His face was tight-etched, with a fierce resolve Leo hadn't seen before, as if he were daring the storm to try him. Ranger lay by his side, head up, ears forward, muscles tensed like a loaded spring. Leo huddled on the couch, clutching an old quilt around his shoulders, his heart thudding so hard it felt like it might shake his ribs loose. The storm outside was bad enough, but the fear that gnawed at him, that hollow, desperate kind, had nothing to do with thunder or lightning. It was the terror of losing the one good thing he'd found. He looked over at Eli, whose profile was sharp in the glow of the flickering firelight, looking like something out of an old western, all grit and steel. Ranger let out a low, rumbling growl, not at the storm, but at the palpable tension in the room. Leo reached out his fingers, brushing through the Labrador's rough fur. The feel of it grounded him like holding onto a rope in a raging sea. Finally, Eli spoke, his voice calm but edged with iron. "They'll be back. Maybe not tonight, but soon. Men like Henderson, once they get it in their heads, they're right, they don't let up easy. Leo swallowed hard, his voice barely above a whisper. What if they take me? Eli turned his gaze on him, steady as a mountain. Then we fight. We don't roll over and play dead, you hear me? We stand our ground. Ranger let out a sharp bark, as if agreeing. Eli's eyes softened just a touch as he leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees. Leo, I've been where you are. Different details, same kind of pain. Folks wanting to tell you what you are, where you belong. Telling you that your scars mean you're broken. He shook his head slowly, his voice dropping low. They're wrong, you hear me? They're dead wrong. The fire popped a sharp crack that made Leo jump. Eli didn't flinch, just reached over and set a steady hand on Leo's shoulder. His grip was firm, warm, like an anchor. Whatever's out there, he said, his voice steady. We'll handle it together. It wasn't a fancy speech. It was real, and it stuck to Leo's ribs better than any meal. The storm raged through the night wind, howling like a freight train down the valley. The power cut out just after midnight, leaving the cabin lit only by the glow of the fire and the occasional flash of lightning. Eli lit an old oil lantern, its flame flickering in the drafty room. Leo couldn't sleep, not with the storm screaming outside and the weight of what might come pressing on his chest. He sat up watching Ranger snore softly at his feet. Eli was still in his chair, the rifle close, eyes half closed but never fully asleep. The Labrador's presence was like a heartbeat in the room, steady and grounding. At some point, Leo got up, blanket wrapped around his shoulders like a cape, and shuffled over to Eli. He stood there awkwardly, like he wasn't sure if he was allowed, then finally blurted out, "Can I sit with you?" Eli cracked one eye open and smiled faintly, patting the space next to her. "Come on, kid." Leo curled up beside him, his head resting on Eli's shoulder. It was a clumsy fit, his bony frame pressed against Eli's solid weathered body, but it felt safe in a way he hadn't felt in a long time. Eli draped his arm around him without a word, and they sat like that for a long while, just listening to the storm beat against the walls. As the pre-dawn light struggled through the thinning clouds, painting the cabin in shades of bruised purple and gray, Leo finally spoke, his voice hoarse, raw from tears and fear. I was at a foster home before this. Mr. Harrison, he used to train canines for the state police. He talked about them a lot. The dogs, how they were family even after they retired. And how some of them, well, they just disappeared, like they were broken tools. Leo paused, his voice barely a whisper. He had a photo of a black Labrador, and he always said he was the best. His name was Ranger. Eli's world tilted. The name, Ranger. His Ranger. The Labrador curled beside them, the Labrador Leo had named Ranger. His mind raced, piecing together the fragments. Mr. Harrison. The state K-9 unit. The stories. A chilling yet profoundly beautiful realization settled over him. His Ranger had been a legend. The K-9 unit was a tight-knit brotherhood, and the story of Eli's loss of Ranger's heroism was known. Leo, in the care of a former K-9 trainer, had heard those stories. He knew. This wasn't coincidence. This was fate. A powerful, undeniable connection woven through loss and the unwavering spirit of a Labrador. Eli felt a surge of emotion. Grief for his past, but also an overwhelming sense of destiny for his present. He wasn't just protecting a boy and a dog anymore. He was protecting a legacy, a living echo of the partner he had lost, a second chance he never dared to dream of. With the truth revealed, the storm outside seemed to abate, its fury spent. The sky began to lighten, promising a new day. Eli's resolve hardened sharper than any blade. He wasn't a hermit anymore. He was a guardian with a purpose clearer than the crisp morning air. He would fight. For Leo. For Ranger. For the family they had found in the heart of Redwood Creek. He would go to town not just to gather supplies, but to gather every scrap of support he could. He would face the system not as a broken man, but as a man reborn. And as the first rays of sunlight pierced the clouds, Eli reached for a small, tarnished object on a dusty shelf, his old K-9 badge. He didn't need it to be a cop. He needed it to remember why he was fighting. The morning sun, usually a welcome sight, felt cold and judging as they drove into the bustling town of Redwood Creek. The county courthouse loomed a stern gray edifice that seemed to suck the warmth from the air. Eli, in his best-worn jeans and a clean but still faded flannel shirt, gripped the steering wheel of his old pickup. Beside him, Leo sat rigid. His small hands clenched, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and the nascent courage that had begun to bloom in the quiet safety of Eli's cabin. In the back, Ranger, the magnificent Labrador, sat patiently, his head sticking out the window, ears flapping in the breeze, utterly oblivious to the legal battle ahead, yet somehow a symbol of their unity. The courthouse interior was a maze of polished linoleum, hushed whispers, and the distant clatter of officialdom. It felt too big, too cold, too official, for the simple, raw truth they carried. Leo clung to Eli's sleeve, his small body trembling. Eli squeezed his fingers tight, a silent anchor. He remembered countless courtrooms from his policing days. The detached legal arguments, the cold facts. But today, the stakes were different. This wasn't about law. It was about life, about family. The hearing began, a blur of legal jargon and grim faces. Agent Henderson, looking impeccably sharp in a tailored suit, presented his case with a clipped professional detachment. He painted a picture of Eli as an isolated, unstable former officer, and Leo as a vulnerable minor needing the state's intervention. Eli listened, his jaw tight, the arguments feeling like paper darts against the solid wall of his resolve. Then it was Eli's turn. He rose, not with the practiced swagger of a lawyer, but with the quiet dignity of a man who knew his truth. He spoke not in legal terms, but in the language of the heart. His voice was clear, simple, and resonated with an undeniable truth. He told the judge about Leo, how the boy had shown up with nothing but the clothes on his back, and a dog with more scars than I'd ever seen on one creature. He described how they had built a home together, not with blueprints and lumber, but piece by piece, through shared silences, through tentative questions about scrambled eggs, through the quiet companionship of a loyal Labrador. He spoke of Ranger, the dog Leo had named. He didn't dwell on the twist of fate, the echo of his past canine partner, but he alluded to it, speaking of a dog given a second chance, just like a boy, just like himself. He explained how family isn't always about blood, but about the people who stay when the storm hits, the ones who choose you and who you choose back. He spoke of the lessons learned in the dusty solitude of Redwood Creek, that healing takes time, that trust is earned, and that true strength lies not in isolation, but in connection. The judge, a woman with a stern but thoughtful face, listened in silence, her eyes unblinking. Eli knew she had heard countless stories, seen endless legal battles. But as he spoke, he felt a flicker of something, a slight softening in her gaze. Finally, she looked at Leo. The boy stood with his shoulders squared, a small yet powerful figure. Ranger, sensing the gravity of the moment, nudged Leo's hand with his nose. "Son," the judge asked, her voice calm, direct. "Do you feel safe with Mr. Thorne? Do you consider this place your home?" The courtroom held its breath. Eli's heart hammered against his ribs. This was it. The moment everything rested on. Leo looked up at the judge, his eyes shining not with fear, but with a newfound certainty. His voice, usually a whisper, was small but clear, unwavering. "He's my home." Eli's chest swelled so tight he thought it might crack. The words hit him with the force of a revelation. He's my home. Not a house, not a cabin, but him. Leo saw Eli not as a caregiver, not as a former cop, but as the embodiment of safety, belonging, and love. Ranger, as if understanding, let out a soft, contented sigh, leaning into Leo's leg. It was the sound of a battle almost won. The judge was quiet for a long time, her eyes thoughtful, looking from Leo to Eli, then to the steadfast Labrador at the boy's side. Then, with a slow, deliberate nod, she spoke. The words felt like a sunrise breaking over a long, cold night, cutting through the tension, filling the air with warmth. "Custody granted." Eli didn't cry, but his hands trembled as he gripped Leo's shoulder. The boy looked up at him, eyes shining, and for the first time, Eli didn't see the scared kid who'd stumbled onto his porch. He saw his own. They walked out of that courthouse into the bright afternoon sun. The air was crisp clean, filled with the promise of autumn. Ranger bounded ahead, his tail wagging like a banner in the wind, a beacon of joy. Eli stood tall Leo at his side and took a long, deep breath of the open air. They were family now, no matter what the papers said. And for the first time in a long time, the future didn't feel like something to dread. It felt like something to fight for. The fight was far from over. But together, they had won this round, proving that true courage isn't just about standing your ground, but about opening your heart. And their journey of healing was just beginning a trail forward that led into the wide-open expanse of their chosen family. The courtroom dust had settled the legal battle won. But the true victory wasn't etched in court documents. It was forged in the quiet understanding between a man, a boy, and a dog. As Eli, Leo, and Ranger stepped out into the crisp Montana air, the sun warmed their faces not just with light, but with a profound sense of purpose. They were family, now irrevocably bound by choice resilience and the healing power of unconditional love. Their story isn't just about a broken system or a lonely man finding connection. It's a testament to the powerful, often unexpected ways second chances unfold. Think about it, Eli. A K-9 officer haunted by loss found his purpose renewed not in the uniform he once wore, but in the simple act of opening his home. Leo, a boy cast adrift by circumstances beyond his control, discovered safety and belonging, not in a sterile institution, but in the rugged warmth of a stranger's cabin. And Ranger, a retired K-9 once deemed a tool past his prime, found not just a soft place to land, but a renewed mission to be the loyal heart of a brand new family. Have you ever felt lost, like a piece of you is missing? Or perhaps you've encountered an animal, a person who unexpectedly filled a void you didn't even know you had. That's the magic of it. Just like Eli and Leo, we often stumble upon our greatest blessings when we least expect them, when we're focused on running away from pain rather than running towards healing. And let's talk about Ranger the magnificent Labrador. He wasn't just a supporting character. He was the catalyst, the golden thread that wove this family together. His presence, his unwavering loyalty, his very scars spoke volumes. He showed Leo how to trust again, offering a silent, furry anchor in a world that had repeatedly let the boy down. He reminded Eli of the unbreakable bond he once shared, prompting him to open his heart and redefine what family truly meant. Ranger is a living embodiment of resilience, a testament that even after hardship, there's always a new purpose to be found. Many retired K-9s like Ranger go on to become incredible therapy dogs or cherished family pets, their disciplined training seamlessly transitioning into boundless affection and companionship. They continue to serve not with a badge, but with their boundless hearts. So what does family mean to you? Is it defined by bloodlines or by the people who stand by you when the world storms? Is it the grand gestures or the quiet moments of shared cocoa and whispered secrets Eli, Leo, and Ranger discovered? It's the latter. It's the daily decision to show up to protect, to heal, and to choose each other day after day. Their journey reminds us that every scar tells a story, but it doesn't have to be the end of the story. It can be the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with more love, more connection, and more hope than you ever imagined possible. This story of healing second chances and the family we choose is just one of many inspiring tales we bring to you. If their journey touched your heart, if you believe in the power of unexpected connections, and if you're an animal lover who understands the profound impact these incredible creatures have on our lives, then join our community. Subscribe to our channel, share your own stories of chosen family in the comments below, and let's keep these powerful narratives alive. Because sometimes the greatest lessons aren't found in textbooks, but in the quiet courage of a boy, the unwavering loyalty of a dog, and the open heart of a solitary guardian, forging a home in the wild, beautiful expanse of Redwood Creek. The trail forward is always brighter when you walk it together.